Good evening, everybody. Very good to see each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us for class. A little bit light this evening in numbers, but I'm sure we will make up for it with some good discussion. I got a newfound respect to those of you who do things like drive to Lexington every day for work or every few days. I know Luke does it 3 days a week. Did that today. Took a lot more out of me than I thought it would, and I've had a tremendously difficult time organizing my ideals for this lesson. And then some acid reflux showed up earlier right before I got up here, so we're in good shape. I will probably lean on some of you guys for input, but we are going to do lesson number 9, Do Not Speak Against One Another, in this theme of our one another and togetherness Christianity. This is something that I feel like it can affect all of us, whether someone's speaking about us or us speaking about someone. Speaking and communicating is something that we do a lot throughout our days and all through our lives. And some people speak more than others, but when you have something that you do a lot, the chances of you messing up in that thing is just higher, right? Any of you guys play sports? If you go shoot three free throws in basketball, a lot of us, you can get to where you make 3 in a row. If I ask you to do 100, I pretty much think that no one is going to be able to do that. So just like in anything else in speech, if you do it all the time, there are more and more opportunities to slip up. And like I said, some of us do more than others. So if you're someone like me who likes to communicate and talk to people, it's something that I have to watch out for even more. Not that speaking and communicating are in any way a bad thing, but it's just an opportunity we can quickly get in trouble. As James talks about the tongue being an evil that no man can tame, it is something that could certainly lead us astray. It's also something that you can do a lot of good with. I want to start with a famous speech, where it'll add a little context, a little flavor for the first subject that we are going to discuss. Some of you this will be familiar to, some maybe not. It is not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. Does anyone recognize that speech? That is Theodore. I knew you would. You never let me down. Theodore Roosevelt, the man in the arena. Did you at least pick up on it? I know in 1910 the dialect is a little bit different than what we use today. But it is not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. A flawed man who's making mistakes and striving, committing errors again and again, but is after a higher achievement. The author of our book had something in the teacher's guide that said one of the easiest things in the world to do is criticize and find fault with those who are trying to do something good. In the church, you are going to be surrounded by, and you are going to be party to hearing a lot of speeches from someone who is trying to do good. It is always going to be easy to criticize, say, I didn't understand, that's not the way I would have said it, that was too short, that was too long, this is not connecting. It's very easy to do those things, but we must remember that the intention is good. And when you hear those criticisms, I often think, well, could you do better? Or could I do better? If I couldn't do better, I'm probably going to pull back my criticisms a bit. As Christians, we have spent, and certainly a lot of this class, we have spent time talking about different things we can do to lift each other up. The speech, when our speech is not dialed in, it does the exact opposite, or can when it comes to the sin of grumbling or excessive criticism. We can bring we are actively bringing each other down. Doesn't mean, I'm sure, that there's nothing you can ever say ever in edification, or no conversations that you can have to help someone find improvement. But the constant criticism is something that is certainly hurtful. And again, I want to remind you all that the people we're surrounded with are people that are trying to do good, right? Their attempt is at being good. Why would we, if we really pay attention to our words, want to pull that down? Right? Why would we want to stifle someone's actions, someone's words, someone's attempt at actually trying to do good for all of us? If a preacher preaches, whose edification is it for? Yours. I'm sure the preacher, the teachers, they get something out of lessons that they prepare, of course. It's hard to not get something out of something you study and strive for. But it is a gift of edification. It is a gift of teaching, a gift of lesson. At least they are trying to. At least they are trying to give you a gift. And they're trying to help you, and they're trying to serve the Almighty. Even if it was let's just say, objectively, whatever you heard from someone teaching at church, let's just say objectively, for the sake of argument, it wasn't very good. Has someone ever given you a gift and it wasn't really your thing? Did you say, what in the world is this? Why'd you give me this? Did you go tell somebody, can you believe that this guy tried to give me a blue shirt? He knows I don't want any more blue shirts, right? We would never do that. I would hope you would never do that, of course. Now, if we flip that on its head, we look at the sin of grumbling. We look how that can come across when we see people criticize others. And it absolutely has something to do with our mood and our mindset. These things we hear and these things we take in, they shape our mindset. Jesus once said that out of the heart, the mouth speaks. And this comes in all types of clean speech situations, not just grumbling or complaining. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Now, you can do a lot with that. There's a lot of lessons we can spin off that. I once had trouble trying to explain to somebody, or I was trying to get help. Hey, how can I explain to people in the world why as Christians we curb our tongues? How can I explain with a godly message that we don't use those words? And I'm sure you've heard lofty arguments that say, oh, those words are made by men. There's not a list of them in the Bible that you can't say, which are true, right? There is no verse that says I can't say these type of words explicitly. So I was trying to work on this argument, and a lot of the feedback I got kind of fell short. There would be generalities like, well, it sets a bad example. Okay, help me explain that to a doubter. If the doubter says, well, these words are just made up words, these are just made up things that we can, how do I defend that? How do I push back? And if somebody is really trying to learn, but I'm making a bad argument to them about scriptures, I feel like I'm not doing my job by trying to convince them. And I come back to this verse, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. If I said a thought, or if I said anything, where did it originate? In your mind, in your heart. Something short of a medical condition, there's nothing that we can say that we didn't first think. And if the words and intentions we know that we use and then that we know that we have some kind of bad connotation that is unbecoming of a Christian, something that doesn't build up, something that doesn't make the cause of Christ look good, that means we thought it first. So the speech of first, so this is kind of a double-sided, two-phase thing we have to do to work on. I often tell myself, I caught myself from saying that. It was good. I shouldn't have said it, and I didn't. The next step is, but I still thought it. I still thought it. Maybe I can work forward to maybe not thinking it. A lot of times we cannot control exactly how we react or where our mind goes in a moment, but we can always work on those things to steer them in a different direction. Now, does this mean that what do you guys think about this? Does this mean that I will never mention someone else to someone else? I will never mention party A to party B in anything other than an absolutely glowing light. Does that mean I could never do that ever? No, right? I mean, that would be fairly impractical, right? I'm sure as parents you've had to get together and speak about what are you going to do with this child? Why are they acting this way? In an eldership, I'm sure there are unfortunate situations where before approaching someone, you may have to meet. You may have to say, this is the situation, this is what we've heard, this is what was said, this is what was done. How can we approach this? There are going to be times you have to use wisdom and discernment in those situations on what you're going to say about someone. But that doesn't mean we run wild with it. Yes, sir.
This passage in James 4, I think it's really important to look at this in the context of this section of this chapter, and going back, starting in verse 1, because what he's talking about here is he's talking about things that cause division among the brethren. And he's talking about passions. He's talking about covetousness. He's talking about pride and jealousy. He's talking about all these evil attributes that cause problems and divisions in the church. And so when he's talking about do not speak evil against one another, he's talking about a speech that comes from a heart of jealousy, a heart of arrogance, a heart of pride, and creating division. And so I think what he's getting at here is, if you're going to talk about someone, something they've done, or even talk to them about those things, what is the heart behind that? Are you trying to edify and build up, or are you trying to denigrate and tear down? And we really need to examine ourselves and before we make any kind of criticism and figure out where our heart is. Because if our heart is just, I'm jealous that you have the gumption to get up and do these things. I'm jealous that, we criticize the elders because, we wish we had some authority or whatever the case may be. That is not a heart that belongs to godly people. And we really need to look inward at where those things are coming from. It's not that we can't judge sin. It's not that we can't try to build one another up. But what are we trying to accomplish?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And can you list again some of those things that were mentioned in that passage, not the speech, but the other sins that you mentioned?
He's talking about quarrels and fights and passions that are at war, desires. He mentions murder and covetousness and adultery. He calls them adulterous people, I think, in the broader sense.
Correct.
And jealousy, pride.
So I say all that to say, we can get rid of 90% of that real quick. Well, if you had a hard and fast rule, you can't talk bad about somebody behind their back. How much jealousy, strife, divisions, quarrels with that squash right there. If you had a hard and fast rule, I can't do it, I don't do it, it's not something I do, I'm taming the tongue and I'm taming the heart, I don't do it. I don't give any party to that. Again, maybe a bit impractical that you can't ever mention someone ever when they're not there because of difficult situations that you're trying to do the best you can with, but that is absolutely a good place to start. And as Jonathan said, to look inward. What we speak out loud, I really believe it kind of, if that thought pops into your head, and it's not such a great thought, and then you say it, you essentially hear it twice. You heard it once when you thought of it, you heard it again when you said it. The people you said it to heard it. And that creates an environment. We are absolutely human beings, and the Lord knows this. He knows our psychology, our biology. He put us together. He knows how we work. And I love it when people will perform experiments and studies, and they come to these conclusions, really nice data sets that say this is the way a human should operate, and we look back and we say, yeah, Scripture has said that very clearly, that is the way you should live your life. Negative environments shape us so much. I've heard of some authors, some writers that do some self-experimenting, and I promise you, some people can are better than others at not letting outside things shape them and influence them. Other people knowingly will tell you, it shapes me and influences me. I can't do it. My wife will tell, how do you watch something like that before you lay down and go to bed? And I say, because it's not real. Go over, go sleep. Well, she has a sweet heart, kind heart. It's going to bother her if there's any type of strife or conflict. But that is not to say that it doesn't wear on me at all. Something I find women are usually tend to have a little higher anxiety. Anybody know what most women's favorite podcast or thing to listen to is? True crime. Lucky guess. Yes, true crime. Shows about people that literal, not made up fiction scenarios, right? That's where, like I said, I have a harder time with that. Real stories of unspeakable, horrid things that have been done to people. It is captivating. It is entertaining. I mean, if you had to drive from here to Texas, you want some, I mean, that's a good way to pass the time. But can you imagine what that is? I was riding with my wife, and there were a couple episodes in a row where we had listened to, and it particularly, there were a few episodes where children got hurt. And after a while of really stewing in my thoughts, I said, we got to turn this off. For an hour and a half, I've thought about taking vengeance on a bunch of people that have done these bad things. You have to turn this off. But isn't that a completely normal reaction to hear innocence being hurt? And it doesn't mean we can't be aware of the bad things that are happening in the world. But we all are absolutely influenced by our environment. I listened to a journalist who said that he performed a self-experiment, and he said for 30 days, all I did was watch the news, listen to music that talks about conflict. I forget what else he had said he did. The main three things that he said, I just constantly watched the news, music was confrontational, and maybe he ate things that he knew wasn't good for him. In 30 days, and he said, I'm not somebody that really feels like I soak in the environment. 30 days, I was majorly clinically depressed. Couldn't sleep, it was just anxiety through the roof. I mean, really in dire straits. So, Am I telling you not to not watch the news? Yes, I am. No. Probably not very much. The things we consume absolutely, positively shape our minds. And if we are involved with spewing and consuming speech that is unclean, or speech that is quarrelsome, or speech that is tearing someone down in this first example and not building them up, how can that not shape your life? How can that not change the way you view people and view the world? You ever hear people say, I just couldn't get along with people at church. It was, there's too much of this, too much of that, a little cliquey, there was hypocrites there, and they leave. How much you think those people were talking about their church experience negatively before they ever left? Reinforcing that ideal in their minds over and over and over. Of course, if you're going to do that, of course you're going to have a bad taste in your mouth and have a negative outlook on what is done. So I say all that just to say our words shape our environment, and our environments shape how we view things. Again, it doesn't always mean that you can't discuss issues and problems that come up. I have a friend that a brother in Christ I've discussed things like that with before, and they'll always follow up with a long text message of, we got to really make sure this is not us. We have to really make sure this is not a me problem, a you problem. We have to really make sure we're discerning this correctly and not bringing biases and personal prejudices into that. And I always appreciated that. Keeps us from running wild. Then this quarreling, this talking behind people's backs, and this tearing down of people that are trying to be good, do good, and give us gifts, one of the dangers is it runs wild. It runs into what can be slander. So this is where we have to draw the line. If you are in a situation where you have to discuss someone or something, they're not present, and you're trying to make sense of things, if we can make this rule hard and fast, we are only going to talk about factual things that we know. Because what happens? What happens when you start to speculate? Nothing good. Where does it end up? You start assigning motives to that person. You haven't even talked to them yet. It could be just a big misunderstanding. You start assigning motives. Then you're talking, I think they're saying this because they really believe that. I've heard people in the church accuse people of teaching false doctrines that they've never taught before. I said, if you listen to them, they're very clearly teaching the truth, and I don't think they believe it. Well, I don't know what else you want them to do. They stood in the pulpit, they preached the gospel, they preached the truth. I don't think they believe it. But what else can they do, right? We can build up someone's motives in our mind, and we can run amok really quick. If somebody says something, say they've offended you, but you're not real sure, do they mean it? Do they mean it another way? Was it a misunderstanding? And I get together with somebody and I start talking about it. And then we start, yeah, you know what? I bet he did say so. I bet he would. I bet he would say something like that, and here's why. You know what someone once told me? And then you just start turning something big in your mind into a situation that's it may not even exist. And again, go back to the environment. What we say, think, and how we converse, that shapes our environment, that shapes our mind. It shapes how we view the world. I don't know, and I'm talking to myself here. I have to stop myself a lot. I will be at home, I'll be getting ready for bed or laying in bed, and I'll think about something that's happening at work. And I anticipate a conflict. I anticipate maybe nothing big, maybe something was said, maybe something was said, and I thought, okay, to get this deal done, I'm going to have a battle. And then I'll start going through my mind how this conversation's going to go. And then I think, what would their best rebuttal be? And then I come up with that, and I come up with a rebuttal. And I will sit around, and if I'm just left to my own devices, I'll get really spun up. I mean, really spun up about something that never even happened yet. And I'm telling you, we will do the same thing with our tongues if we don't control ourselves. Funny story, actually. I took a 4-day weekend not long ago. I took a Friday and a Monday off work. And Thursday, my boss made a joke of why I couldn't do a deal that I was working on. He just made a joke. He thought I knew he was joking. When I'm telling you I was mad all 4 days of the weekend, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go turkey hunting. I'm going to spend some time for me. The drive back and forth from the farm the whole time, I was just thinking, okay, we're going to go battle Tuesday when I get back. We're going to really have, and Tuesday morning, my wife even says, you're not in a good mood. And Tuesday morning, I went to his office. I said, if this is the case, you need to let me know. That's respectful. I need to know so I can tell the person to move on. And he said, what are you talking about? Of course we're going to do it. I was just kidding with you. I wasted 4 days of my life because I was letting my own mind run amok. Now, I am the only thankful thing I have in that situation is, one, that person wasn't a member of the congregation, and two, I never said it out. I wasn't saying it out loud to somebody else. Think of the waters I would have poisoned. Think of that. Think of the negative environment that I would have created if I would have ever said those things out loud. So when you think, when you talk, when you converse with others, stick to facts. Stick to facts. Don't try to be mind readers. Don't try to assign motives that you don't know. And that will solve a lot of problems. The other thing, when it comes to speaking against one another. Well, first, let me pause the class. Anybody have anything they want to say or add or bring to that? Make fun of me for, I'm pretty vulnerable up here. I hope you guys don't think too lowly of me after I share these. Yes, ma'am.
It's a training. You know, if you think of yourself going to the gym to build yourself, your muscles up, be strong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't just go, you know, for 5 minutes once every other week. You know, you have to, it's a continuous thing. Same with your things that go through your heart and mind. You know, how someone likes to think that I tend to be negative.
Okay.
So
Someone? I'm sorry. I couldn't help.
But anyway, so it's something that I have to work on, you know, thinking, okay, how can I think about this positively? And it's something that I just have to do constantly. It's a constant thing for me. Some other people may not have an issue with that. Wonderful. I wish I was like that.
Mm-hmm.
My brain just goes that way. But it is something that you have to constantly work on to do that.
Yes.
Yourself where when something does arise, your first thought isn't going that way.
Yes, absolutely. You bring up a good point. It's just like a lot of these things we talked about. If some people's minds do just wire differently and they're just going to go in a negative direction, it can be past experiences, it can be trauma, it can be, you know, genetics. They did a study about babies who were in the womb during the World Trade Center around that, I think in that area, that were directly affected. Their families were direct, but they weren't born yet. All these babies, when they grew up and they studied them, they had higher stress and higher anxiety, and it can be genetic. But it doesn't mean we lean on that and say, oh, I can't get better. A lot of these commands that we're going through, it's not, if I could snap my fingers and say, guys, please don't talk bad about each other ever again, and you just did it, that would be great. That's the ideal. I mean, but it is for many people, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be something that you have to work on greatly. And we'll talk about people with I'm going to pick on a few people with sunny dispositions here in a minute, and maybe we can learn from them. At the end of the day, it is a choice. It is work that we have to do. And and ultimately, we are going to have more unity and more togetherness and more oneness in Christ when we stick to these examples. The other thing when we talked about slander, when we get into slander, and slander I want to define as things that aren't true or may not be true, and we say them anyway. Maybe we're guessing, right? And you hear things and you start, okay, they did that because of this, I bet they're doing this, and it turns into something that it shouldn't be. We talked about giving each other the benefit of the doubt in earlier classes. I have seen examples in the church where that's just not being done. The example, you see it a lot from the pulpit, oh, they said this, maybe if I twisted on that a little bit, they could mean something false. I bet you they're teaching false doctrine. That's not what they meant at all. Or you don't know yet. So believing the best in each other, believing that that person is striving to do right, and then if there's anything said or anything done that doesn't sit well, most of the time you can simply approach the person and ask for clarification, and you're going to have a pretty clear answer. Believing the best in each other is going to stop a lot of this, and especially going to stop you from getting into these slanderous things where you speak and it turns into something that it shouldn't be. I want to, many times it's a communication issue. I listen to people in different industries, different things that I'm interested in, and many times I hear what they say and they have a lot of detractors. I untangle it in my mind and I say, you know what, he was right or she was right. They didn't do a very good job explaining it. And they're going to face a lot of negativity because of that. A lot of times they're communication issues. My mother and we had to learn a lot about each other because the way if I go out that left door, you take it to the bank, she's going out the right one. Not to spite me, not to do anything. That's just, we're different. We're very different. She has said things before, and I'll go to my dad and I'll say, Dad, what did she mean? This sentence, what does she mean? And he'll say, oh, she just means, and it says something completely different. And I'll think, none of those words mean what any of those words mean. But that's what she meant. Oh, that was a pretty innocent thing to say. We have communication issues that if we just simply ask for clarification, it can be made better. And if we give each other the benefit of the doubt, we're going to be made better. Don't assume the worst in your brothers and sisters in Christ. Again, we are planning to share eternity with these people. I don't know why we would conjure up something negative in our minds about them. All right. Believing good in others. I've seen, and I think for most of us, if we really get down to it, our mood and our outlook, what we think, which influences what we say, is a choice. That choice does, as Natalie said, that choice comes easier for some than others. But I thought about something. I was having a conversation. This was maybe last year, year before. We were still living in Cleveland. The Rays came to visit, and something came up about Mickey. Jackson had asked me something, and I said, you know, Mickey's pretty tough. And maybe, and self-proclaimed, he probably will not tell you that's the best adjective to describe him, right? When you think of who's the guy in the congregation that's tough and wears flannel shirts and chops wood, he's going to say, yeah, it's probably not me. This is what I meant by that. For 3 years, when I lived here and worshiped, you know what I saw for 3 years? I saw Mickey Ray in a good mood for 3 years. No one's in a good mood for 3 years straight. You're not. You're not. He chose. I know he did. And I'm sure he's got a sunny disposition in general, but I know he chose to focus on good, not focus on negativity, and have a good outlook. And guess what I didn't hear him doing? Didn't hear him gossip, slander, speak negatively. That outlook in life. The other example I thought of is Brad and Jessica. You guys are always seemingly happy, and I know that can't always be the case. You have lives just like the rest of us, children, jobs, families, conflicts, I'm sure. But you guys always have a sunny disposition. I can say this about many of you. I've never seen, I don't even want to ask Barry how he's doing because he's not fine. He is great. Every time I talk to him, I'm great. Oh, it couldn't even be any better. If there's any better, it'd be two of me. You know, you just, and everybody knows that. And I appreciate you. Is that something you feel like you were born with, or did you have to work on that? What do you think? You're probably much better at this than a lot of us. So,
for me, I grew up in an environment where my mom was not on my side, and I've said this before. When I say that, it doesn't mean I sound. I wanted them to go with me to people's houses and like fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I was young.
yeah.
But I got stopped because you don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? If someone's done something to you or whatever, you have no idea. Maybe they or maybe it was a misunderstanding. Whatever. You brought something up at the beginning of the class. If I thought I could do something better for someone, I would complain less or something like that. But even at that point, if I thought I could do something better, is it good to even think that way? You know what I'm saying? Maybe the right approach would be, maybe I can be effective like they are, you know, this or whatever, you know what I mean? So that's kind of the environment I grew up in. It was always the benefit of the doubt. You don't know what people are going through. Just have a little grace with them.
So it's a parental example for you.
It was, from both sides, a little bit. More so mom than dad. But it doesn't always work. I wish I was more like that, but it's kind of the environment I grew up in.
Jess, what about you? You learn from him. Well, that's interesting. You know what you both have shared? That it was a learned behavior from environment. That you got told, hey, give people the benefit, think good things. And I can tell that you guys both do that. Barry, is it just natural?
I grew up in a negative so many years. And I got better after I got away from my family. So now it's natural.
Yeah.
It is now, but it used to not be.
So you learned maybe what not to do. And that meant a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's
Johnny, I always tell Barry, he's blessed because he has Nancy.
And I agree with her.
yeah, I'm sure always
She's absolutely right.
bright and sunny. Yeah.
Without doubt, she's right.
Yeah, that's very true. And you guys remember, and I know this is kind of a little bit out of context, in the book of Romans, he's making an appeal to largely to Jewish Christians. There's some Gentile things mixed in, but largely to Jewish Christians. We are showing you a more accurate way. We are showing you a better way. Better than the law is Christ. The law condemns you, and Christ sets you free. And it comes to the conclusion there is now no more condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. I'm going to pull that out of context a little bit, but the principle I think remains true. Just assign that to your life. Assign that to your life. No matter how bad things get, you are striving. And if you are trying your best, you are very likely in a condition of an internal headquarters with your name on it. If that doesn't shape our attitude and our outlook, and then in turn shape how we talk, it should. It should. And to think about that Jesus died for you and suffered for you and urged his apostles to take care of his sheep, that they're just like you and you're imperfect too, but Jesus loves us all and has grafted us into him and has clothed us in his white robe because of his suffering. And that's got, if that's not top of your mind, it needs to be. It's kind of hard to be bitter. when you think about that, right? Now, of course, life happens and things some days are more difficult than others. And I did want to use that example with Brad because if you speak with Brad privately, you've voiced frustrations to me in normal things, and you're not this happy, cheery guy that's so happy that you're unrealistic, right? He can converse with you about things and tell you what things that are right and things that need to be steered back in the right direction, but his attitude is always bright and sunny about it. The other thing that I will say when it comes to believing the best in others is, and many times this happens in doctrinal matters. I've had friends teach me things before, and when I first hear it, I said, man, you're crazy. That's not right. It can't be. I grew up in the church, and I didn't get taught that, and that's not right. The first time someone told me the stance that they didn't believe that Jesus was not asking not to die in the garden, I thought, this is just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Studied it out with them, did a lot of self-reflection. I say, okay, I see it. I see where you're coming from. You're not crazy at all. And now we have formed a relationship where when we study and we're having trouble with something, we can go to the other one and say, hear me out about this. This is what I think. And no matter what it is, we'll say, okay, I'm going to look into it too. But we never have this person's off the wall mentality with each other. And I want to, Glenn, I'm going to pick on you just a little bit because Glenn Absher it taught me something one time. We had a Bible study. Remember we used to do the Friday night young couples and we would rotate different people's houses. And I can't remember exactly how it went, but I just know a subject came up and Glenn had said something, and at the time I thought, and he kind of pushed back against the group. We were all saying something. He said, well, he laid out a scenario, and I just thought, I don't see what that has to do with anything, about anything. Now, I could go and knock on a bunch of people's door. Hey, did you hear what Glenn said? That doesn't make any sense. Instead, I was a little perplexed. And years later, I was studying on my own and doing some Bible research and digging into the scriptures, and then I'd reflect. I'd dig into it and reflect. And then I started to come to a conclusion. And then all of a sudden, this was years had passed, and I went, oh, that's what Glenn was trying to tell me. And he's right. But I wasn't ready. So you see what you can do with two different things. If it confuses you, you can ask for clarification. You can have a good outlook with people and a good mindset. You can end up learning some things.
James mentions this other places in his book, being quick to hear.
Quick to hear, slow to speak.
Before we jump off a cliff, let's listen.
Yeah.
And figure out what's going on before we make some practices.
Yep. And so I want to wrap it up. So next week we will do these thought questions. I wanted to lay a good foundation. I felt like if we asked the questions first without talking about it, we'd get a lot of short, brief answers and maybe not elaborate good on the discussion. But if we have some hard and fast rules for when we are going to make these exceptions, where we are going to talk about someone or something, and the connotation may not be super positive, we're trying to solve an issue. We know we're not supposed to backbite, run each other down. And we know, as scripture we talked about in Matthew chapter 18, if someone has an offense against you, you go to them. You go to them. We are usually generally very afraid to do that. Again, we build up, oh, this is going to turn bad scenario in our mind. Almost never does, especially if you're kind in your delivery. And there are even examples where there is concern about something, and you may have to bring it up to the eldership. And I think we both know if you discuss something with the eldership that is spiritually significant, they want you to do that. And how can people know about an issue if you don't tell them? And we also know we are to approach our brothers and sisters if there's some kind of offense or trespass, misunderstanding, whatever. If we would tell ourselves, I'm not allowed to talk about it, slander it, guess about it, on my own with other parties. If it bothers me bad enough that I cannot get over it, then I have two options. If it's something I need to discuss with eldership, I'm going to discuss it with eldership. If it's something I can go to the person and handle it and use the scriptures, I'm going to the person. Either way, you're doing exactly what Scripture says, and you keep yourself from slandering one another. If it's not important enough to go do either of those things, then it's not important enough, or you're not in a state where you're mature enough to have those conversations. And I think if we can rein that in and constantly have a reminder of that, then it will solve a lot of issues. So since we've laid a foundation, we will go through thought questions next lesson. Before we close, does anybody have any final thoughts? Again, anybody want to take a shot at me for my vulnerabilities? I appreciate you guys. I know I picked on a lot of people today, but I really do appreciate your example and the things you've taught us. And with that, we will, I think the bell's about to ring, and we will pick up on Sunday.